Elias Crowe had always believed in bargains. Not the loud, flashing kind you saw in advertisements, but the quiet ones, exchanges made in dim rooms where both parties pretended they weren't losing something vital. He was 47, thin in a deliberate way, with graying hair he kept short so it wouldn't betray him by falling out. He wore the same charcoal coat every winter, the elbows shiny from years of leaning on counters while he negotiated prices down to the cent. On the morning everything changed, the city was wrapped in the kind of cold that made metal ache. Elias walked the 4 blocks from his apartment to the riverfront, hands deep in his pockets, breath fogging like cheap cigarette smoke. He was heading to the Saturday market under the old railway bridge, where vendors sold things that had slipped through the cracks of regular commerce. Cracked porcelain dolls, bootleg software on scratched CDs, jars of honey that tasted faintly of rust. He was smaller than the others, barely a folding table draped in black velvet. No sign, no shouting vendor. Just an old woman in a wool shawl the color of storm clouds, sitting on a stool with her hands folded in her lap. In front of her lay 6 objects, each on its own square of red felt. A brass pocket watch, a fountain pen with a cracked nib, a child's marble swirling with silver, a tarnished silver thimble, a pressed violet in a locket, and a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. Elias slowed. He had an eye for value, and these things looked worthless. That was what drew him closer. The woman looked up. Her eyes were pale, almost colorless, and they fixed on him with a patience that felt older than the bridge overhead. "Morning," Elias said, nodding at the table. "You selling or displaying?" "Both," she replied. Her voice was low, unhurried. "Everything here is for sale." He picked up the pocket watch first. Heavy, cold. The face was cracked, the hands frozen at 3:17. "How much?" She tilted her head. "Nothing." Elias smiled the small, skeptical smile he used on street hustlers. "Nothing's free." "Exactly," she said. "But the price isn't money." He set the watch down. "Then I'm not interested." He turned to leave, but something tugged at him, the same instinct that had once made him buy a box of dusty books at an estate sale and find a first edition tucked between cookbooks. He looked back. "What's the price?" he asked. The woman lifted the vial of clear liquid. "This is water from a spring that no longer exists. 1 sip, and you will never be thirsty again. Not for water. Not for anything." Elias laughed under his breath. "Sounds like a cure for ambition." "Or a cure for wanting," she said. He studied her face for mockery and found none. "And the cost?" "Your memory of the taste of coffee." He blinked. "That's it. That's it." Elias thought of the burnt drip he drank every morning from the pot in his kitchen, black and bitter enough to scour rust. He hated it, but it was ritual. It woke him. It marked the start of another day of calculating margins and outlasting competitors. He shrugged. "Done." The woman uncorked the vial and handed it over. The glass was warm, as if it had been sitting in sunlight. He drank. The water was cool, clean, and utterly without flavor. It slid down his throat like light. He waited for something dramatic, ecstasy, revelation. Nothing came. He handed the vial back. "Coffee's gone," she said. It wasn't a question. He opened his mouth to describe the taste he'd lost, and found only a blank space where the memory had been. Not pain, not even regret. Just absence. He nodded. "Thank you." He walked away lighter, though he couldn't say why. The next Saturday, he returned. The stall was there again, the same 6 objects minus the vial. The woman greeted him with the same calm. "Back for more?" she asked. "I'm curious," Elias admitted. "What else you got?" She lifted the fountain pen. "This pen will write only truth. Whatever you set down with it becomes undeniable fact to anyone who reads it." Had always been his religion. He collected things the way other men collected regrets, quietly, obsessively. The idea of letting go of ownership itself felt like stepping off a cliff. But the marble was beautiful, and the woman was patient. He took it. The change was subtle at first. He noticed he no longer minded when someone borrowed a book and never returned it. He stopped locking his apartment door. He gave away clothes he'd worn for years without a pang. Things drifted away from him, but they no longer felt like losses. One spring morning, Elias walked to the market and found the stall gone. The space under the bridge was empty except for wind-blown trash and pigeon feathers. He stood there a long time, the marble cool in his pocket. He turned homeward. The city looked different, sharper in some places, blurred in others. He passed a cafe and caught the rich, bitter scent of coffee. He felt nothing for it, no nostalgia, no craving. He kept walking. At his apartment, he found the door ajar. Inside, the rooms were stripped bare. Furniture gone, bookshelves empty, even the mismatched mugs missing from the kitchen. Thieves, he supposed. He felt no anger, no violation. The things had never really been his anyway. He sat on the floor amid the echoes and took out the 5 objects he still carried, the watch, the pen, the thimble, the locket, the marble. He laid them in a row. Without urgency, he could sit there forever. Without pain or pleasure, touch meant little. Without dreams, sleep was optional. Without lies, speech felt pointless. Without possession, the objects in front of him were just shapes of metal and glass. He understood, finally, what the woman had meant. Nothing is free. Every gift had been a subtraction, precise and irreversible. He had paid in installments until nothing essential remained. He was unhungry, unthirsty, unhurried, unlaying, unfeeling, undreaming, unowning. He was efficient, blank, weightless. Elias picked up the fountain pen that wrote only truth. On the bare floorboards, he wrote a single sentence. I am still here. The words stared back at him, undeniable. He wasn't sure if that was comfort or the final invoice. Outside, the city kept moving, full of people trading their days for money, their money for things, their things for fleeting satisfaction. Elias watched from the window, neither envious nor pitying. He had everything he'd asked for. And nothing left to want.